Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Life After LADD214. Today, I have with me a very special guest, Jeff Slate. Jeff, how are you today?
Doing great, man. I'm doing great.
Good to hear. Good to hear. So, Jeff, you and we met back at Fort Drum. That was, 2012 is when I first got there. I think I left it sounds like 2 years, but it felt like a lifetime.
Oh yeah, went through a lot of stuff.
Yeah, because I got into the S3 shop and then I never left. But you had come in at some point later on.
Yeah, because they had me bouncing around because they're like, oh, you're a transportation person, but you used to be signal, so you're smart.
You were kind of like the shop's computer nerd. Like,
A
we
little
didn't
bit.
have to go to. We didn't want to always have to go to S6. We were like, Slate, we need this. Sergeant Slate,
Yeah,
we need this. So
and the
yeah,
radios and everything else.
exactly. See what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, if it fell under S6, it fell under Sergeant Slate.
I had a lot of fun doing it.
Indeed. So let's jump back all the way to the beginning and let's talk about you and when and why you decided to join the Army.
Well, it was 1996. Bill Clinton was president, and the country was going through a minor recession, so it wasn't a whole lot of jobs out there. And I didn't want to be a mechanic because it was a hobby. I was going to school to be a mechanic, and I realized I was turning my hobby into a job. I couldn't really find something that made me happy to go to work. Fort Benning was right next door to where I lived, so I was like, the military sounds all right. It'll be a good starting point. And I was 18, so figured it'd be a good thing. I walked in. The recruiter was happy to see me because I was probably one of his easy catches because I walked into his shop. And next thing I know, I was in Atlanta taking the ASVAB and going through MEPS and right off the basic training. But yeah, it was just one of
What
those things.
MOS did you pick?
At the time, it was 70. Or no, I'm sorry. It was 31 Romeo, which is now a 74 Quebec.
Which is
It's line of sight radio operations. At the
okay.
time, now it's the STE satellite that the S6 guys trail around so battalions can link up and talk out.
All right, gotcha. And so you went to basic AIT. Where'd you go to AIT?
AIT Fort Gordon, that's where all the signal MOSs go.
Yeah, you did a really good job of trying to leave Georgia.
Yeah. I didn't know signal was, because when I went to MEPS and they're like, which job do you want to do? And I had a grocery list of jobs, and I was just like, can you tell me? I just knew most of my great grandfather and his brothers and all that stuff were military back in World War II and Vietnam and all that stuff. So I was like, I don't want to be with drill sergeants forever. So which one will get me through and get me out of base or that kind of environment, basically? They're like, well, this one's only 3 months long, and the other one they offered, which I should have went with, which was satellites, was a year long. And I was like, I do not want to be with drill sergeants for a year. So I'll go with that one. So that was the line of sight radio operator at the time, because it was MSC, multi-system. I forget what the E stands for, but yeah, that was the '90s stuff that faded out during the 2000 time frame when we first went into Iraq and all that stuff.
Okay, gotcha. And so right after AIT, what was your first duty station? And you, just for clarity, you decided to join active duty.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about reserves or anything like that. I thought it was all or none.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. They just
Yeah.
kind of said, well, you walked in here, this is what you're going to do because we don't need to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, because I walked in, I was like, I want a job, and the guy's like, okay. So
Got
I
it.
was like, I was a very easy check mark in his box.
Yeah, he made his quota that day.
Oh yeah. Um,
Gotcha.
when right after AIT, I went to Germany, and my unit was already in Bosnia, so I was held there for 30 days while in process, and I was married at coming in, and they sent me over before her, so I had to set up all that stuff for the family.
Okay.
And I was leaving literally like a week before my wife landed. and I
No.
hunted down my company commander's wife
Mm-hmm.
through the rear detachment and was like, here's the keys, here's the apartment number, here's when my wife flies in, can someone go pick her up? Because I
Yeah.
didn't know how it was going to work. I was a brand new private. I was like, I had a bus. She's coming into a civilian airport, you know.
Right.
I don't know how she's going to get back from the airport. So they took care of her and everything like that. And I was already in Bosnia. I'll never forget the first time I met my first sergeant. He just looked at me. He's this big, tall, like 6'6", skinny guy, and he just had this voice about him. And he goes, I don't like privates." That's all I thought about. I was like, I can't do anything right in this guy's eyes. I just exist.
That's definitely a good introduction, not only to your unit but to the Army, the real
Yeah,
Army at this point.
yeah. It was the because I fell into a unit that was, since it was in Germany, they were still underneath like the idea of the '80s Army. I mean, they still believed in the wall-to-wall counseling. They still believed in a lot of the NCO education and collaboration. I worked my butt off to get to that point, and I loved it when we started doing that, because we would do our little NCO DP stuff, and this is still when they had the enlisted and the officer clubs and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You would literally get the whole, because they would do like the whole battalion NCO DP together, and then you would just, okay, the class is over, and everyone just take off their blouses and walk over to the bar,
Right.
and you'd have 2 beers and hang out and talk to everybody from all the rest of the companies and battalions, and socialize and network and things like that. And it was different. You can't. That doesn't happen now.
Yeah, I
It's a
don't even think
free
it
for
happened
all.
when we were here. When we were in by Drum, for sure.
No, no. I mean, I saw a drastic change when I came out of Germany in 2000 and went to Fort Sill, and it was like a 180-degree swing on the
Mm-hmm.
military, on how they took care of you and how you looked out for your buddy to your left and right. It was just a completely different unit, and I was just like, "Where's the camaraderie? Everyone's cutting each other's throats." I was
Gotcha.
like, "This is insane," and
Gotcha.
I
Which
just
is
cut it.
still interesting because that's 4 years that you spent in Germany, um, in and out of Bosnia, and then you're flying back to the States to Fort Sill in 2000, you said. So this is still pre 9/11. This is
Oh
still
yeah,
before the world changed for
oh yeah,
everyone.
oh yeah, yeah, and it was. But I took what I learned, and I took my guys under my wing, and I was like, "I'll take care of you. You let me know what you want, and I'll help you out." And
Gotcha.
we were in a TRADOC unit. I got
Hmm.
I got we got sent. I got sent over to a TRADOC unit, and we were doing ComSec.
Okay.
But we also had um, the courses for the Gun Bunnies radio operations.
Hmm.
And since I did radios, I was like, well, oh, I'm sorry. Between me and going from Germany to Fort Sill, I reenlisted. When I reenlisted, I changed MOSs to computers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot that part. But so when I came back to Fort Gordon, but I had to take my family to Fort Sill and set them up and come back to Fort Gordon. And I was at Fort Gordon for like 6 months going through AIT for computers. But then when I went to Fort Sill, I grabbed my guys, and I got with the base knock unit,
Okay.
and they had their own little sergeant's time where they would train on switches and computers and all that stuff. And because us being in TRADOC, we didn't do sergeant's time and all that stuff. And I was like, you guys are losing out on training opportunities. We're just sitting in this little vault room, just rotting.
Right.
So try to take care of them, sending them through the land nav course through that the AIT provided, which was huge. It was 5 kilometers big. So I mean, the artillery guys, I mean, they're very big into land nav. So I mean, it was a great course to run my guys through, because I went through it the first time I set them out, just so I can experience it,
Hmm.
because I'm not
And
going to
you're
send
talking
them.
about you're talking about Fort Sill, right?
Yeah, Fort Sill.
Yeah, I've done that land nav course. It is massive.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's funny because after there was a halfway point that you had to check in at, And they were like, "There's people still out there that we haven't seen yet for the day." And I was like, "Oh my god, these poor privates."
I know.
Because I mean, because they had the officer school and they had the privates, and we went out with the privates. So this way we didn't interfere with the officers' training in case they did something unique, and because we're enlisted, so we didn't want
Yeah,
to interfere with their stuff.
with our barbecue. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Hey, I mean, I got to teach the lieutenants and the officer, uh, the captain's career course radios. So I mean, I got to see the difference between the AIT, the enlisted side, and the officer side, and I got to see the attitude difference
Hmm.
between it all because the officers were getting graded by class. They're like, there's so many points for this class, so many points for this class, and they needed X amount of points to graduate. So they would sit in our class. We had one guy from West Point. He put his feet up on the desk and wouldn't even look at the radios, reading the paper, and we're trying to instruct class, and he just wouldn't do anything. So we're like, okay. So Major came to go get him, and I was like, you need to talk to him.
Got it.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I did it for the reserves on the weekends when they would come in and get their training. But in all, for the TRADOC side, it wasn't that bad. But I only spent maybe 9 months there, and yeah, and then the war kicked off,
Right.
and there were taskings coming left and right to pull people out of TRADOC to go out to be part of the war fighter,
Hmm.
and I was like, I want to go. I'm tired of being in classrooms. So I my tasking was to go with a task force that was going to Iraq and Afghanistan and Cuba, besides being having a centralized base at Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
Okay.
And it was all headed up underneath the CID command.
Well, interesting.
Yeah, and when I got there, it was basically an old warehouse. They just threw cubicles into it and wired it up for communications. And I ended up having to rerun all the SIPRNet because they ran it in conjunction with the NIPRNet, and it violated
Oops.
security standards. So I got a lot of fun in dealing with scaffolding and running through the ceilings and all that stuff. But it was a lot of fun. I went to Gitmo for about 6 months
Hmm.
out of that year, and
Okay.
I got to see the prison before it was built or while it was being built. So I got to see the nice little because it was at the very beginning, the what they called the pumpkin patch. You saw it all
Okay.
over CNN and everything like that. So I got to see the pumpkin patch, and then I got to see the new transition to the new big prison. And yeah, it was night and day, and it was amazing to see it behind the scenes because I'd have to go and fix their computers and all that stuff, and they got this electrical web of people up there, and I'm just like, we're literally just a couple people away from Osama bin Laden. He's right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was eye opening on the amount of what military intelligence actually looks like in real time and in place. Even though we're in Cuba, we're looking at stuff from Afghanistan and Iraq,
Right. That
and
makes sense.
and supporting the guys because even while it's in Cuba, we're still supporting the guys in Afghanistan and Iraq. Setting up stuff for them to be able to send large batches of data back to us and without it taking like 8 hours. It only take like 30 minutes to transfer a couple gigs worth of stuff to us. But yeah, it was a unique experience to see it all up close and personal. And of course we saw every agency that we had in the United States was down there, and it was just amazing to see everybody doing their thing and working together because it was a real time collaboration. I mean, FBI was down there sharing stuff with the Army and the Navy and everybody because they were all one group. The military was all one group. CIA was there. Custom guys were there because they're tracking money and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it was very cool, very unique, and scary
Yeah,
because
I can imagine.
after I got done with this assignment and I went back to Fort Sill, because
Hmm.
I was working at that task force, I made a couple of associates with DIA and a few other agencies that were up there in the DC area, and I found out I can apply to get a position at those locations.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up re-enlisting for needs of the Army, because I applied for a job at DIA, a position at DIA, as military, and they accepted me. And then I re-enlisted for needs of the Army. That's how I got slotted at DIA.
Oh, interesting. And so, for other people who don't know what that is, what does DIA stand for?
Defense Intelligence Agency.
Got it.
And
So you re-enlisted for quote unquote needs of the Army, but in the same time, simultaneously you applied for this DIA position,
yeah,
which you ended up getting.
yeah, because I worked with Branch before I re-enlisted, and I was like, there are positions out there, and they could see them for all these little specialty assignments. And I
Mhm.
was like, I know these people over here. I was like, can you tell me what they want, and I'll give you the paperwork or whatever it is they wanted. And basically, they wanted like a little resume of where have you been, what you've done. Of course, they pull all your S2 stuff over for your security clearance just to see who you are and see if you're worth the time to in order to come over. Even after I got the DIA, there were people that we would get that they didn't have a security clearance, so they'd have to go sit like the mailroom or something like that while they worked out their security clearance for 6 months to a year.
I understand, but the fact that you worked IT in the previous life, right? Didn't that come with a security clearance or not?
Yeah, so when I got to that task force, I had a secret clearance.
Okay,
And when because the task force and all the people that you were dealing with, you need a TS, and you need all the extra little things that go with it. Give it, filled out all the paperwork, and they rushed it because the war's kicking off, and they're just trying to get everything going to where the mission can go through.
right.
And I literally got my TS in like 2 months instead of it could take a year or 6 months. That's one of the other reasons why I was able to get into DIA, because I was already read into a bunch of stuff. Even though when I left the task force, I was read off. They're like, he didn't do anything, while he was there for this, so I guess we can trust him. So they pulled me, and DIA was a blast because you weren't just working with DIA. You were working hand in hand with the Joint Staff.
Mm.
You were working hand in hand with the what we would know it as is the knock. But yeah, you're working with all these other agencies, even though because I was working with DIA. The DIA headquarters is on an Air Force base, but I was working at the Pentagon.
Okay,
So I got to work with everybody that was linked into DIA at the Pentagon. So we were read into so much stuff. They were like, you can't say parts of the alphabet after your security clearance. And I was like, I don't know what I have. I just fix computers and give people access to, to shared folders and things like that.
that's
But
fair.
yeah, it's like I don't
You,
want to know what they're looking at.
Yeah, that's fair. And one thing that people say, especially when you're working in close proximity to the higher levels and higher echelons of the government, is the people that know the most who really don't want to know the most. Anybody who works in facilities or maintenance,
Oh
because
yeah,
they have to let everybody in to lock doors or they have to clean up after people.
you say that because they had a system in all the rooms. So when the custodial staff came in, they would have to like clean their desk up of anything that was sensitive,
Hmm.
and they would flip this light on that would flash across the whole area to let everyone know that there's now going to be uncleared people on the floor,
Hmm.
so they can come through and do their thing and get out of there. I thought of myself more as the butler. I'm there. I hear a lot of stuff, but I don't pay attention to it. I'm just there. I fix what I got to fix, and I move on.
Right,
And
right. But that also reminds me of a battle drill that you and I had to go through while we were in Fort Drum together, working in the talk. Right, like if there was an uncleared person coming in, we had to pause everything, cover all the maps, cover all the equipment, cover everything up that was
yeah, sanitize.
classified.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had
sanitize.
to sanitize the entire talk,
Oh yeah,
uh, just to allow an uncleared person who needed to be inside rather than outside, because most of the time, if they were uncleared, they just weren't going to come through the door.
yeah.
So you were spending some time in the Pentagon. And so I think this is probably like this is around the time that you got out of the army.
Yeah, so 2000. So I was hitting my 10-year mark, and I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to stay, because if I reenlist again, now I'm going in def. I was like, do I want to stay? And this is this is 2007. Yeah,
Okay.
2007. So just before the lovely crash of our stock market, and they were hiring for contractors in my office I was working for, and I was like, I've been harassing this guy for the 4 years I've been working there, and I was like, hey, you want to hire me? And then finally, when I told him I was only got like, 6 months left, he's like, sure. And he sat down with me and he goes, how much do you want? Me, because I was doing the math and I wasn't thinking like a civilian. I was just thinking, okay, this is my base pay. This is how much I'm getting for BAH and stuff like that. And I was like, I need at least 85,000.
Okay.
Well, I didn't know I just completely undercutted myself by like 40 grand.
Right.
And he goes, sure. And I should have realized it when he said it so fast.
Exactly.
And I was like,
Exactly.
okay. But and then after he left, my buddy who was a contractor was on the other side of the cubicle, and he's like, you should have asked for more. And I was like, well, it's too late now.
Yeah. But even still, like at that time, you're like, yeah, really
Yeah.
good joke, right? Because you're not even thinking about that. Everybody goes through a transition at some point, right?
Yeah.
Has to go through their first job interview, and that question is bound to come up.
Oh yeah.
The pay question is always going to come up.
Hmm.
There's hundreds of different ways to be asked that question, and there's 100 different ways to answer that question.
Yes.
It's it's interesting to me because you being a soldier for 10 years, you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer as best as I can. And you did that, not realizing that you're in a civilian interview that
Yeah.
you don't answer that question that way.
No. No. I should have asked him more along the lines, what's your competitive salaries or something, Now hindsight, you ask them a question with that from that question. Because yeah, you're basically opening the door for them to lowball.
Right. And you just decided to like throw a grounder at the guy, um, not realizing that that's what you were doing.
Yeah, because I'm from Georgia. 85 grand in Georgia's awesome.
Right.
I mean,
Especially in
especially
2007.
yeah, especially 2007. I mean, but I wasn't looking at I'm in DC.
Right. Exactly. One day, a long time ago, we were talking about this exact situation, but you ETS'd out of the army.
Yeah.
The next week, you showed up to the exact same office, just in
So just
civilian clothes.
it was literally yeah, I ETS'd out. So I got I literally I ETS'd out on a Friday, and I showed back up Monday afternoon after doing my paperwork with the company, back in my same chair that I was literally sitting in on Monday or on Friday.
Yeah.
They're like, here's your spot, and I was like, this is my spot.
This is my old spot.
Yeah,
Like, look,
and
the gum is still here.
yeah, I was like, that's Prince still in the chair.
So I have to ask this question: what was that ETS like? Right, the the first ETS. Did you have to do like a ACAP process at that time?
No, no.
Interesting.
The only all you got your clearing papers like a normal soldier, 30 days out, and they gave you your checklist everywhere you had to get signed off on, and that was it. They were like, good luck.
Interesting.
I
Because
mean,
you did, but you also like, so they gave you your 30-day out checklist to clear all of the things or all the agencies on at the Pentagon that needed to clear you,
yeah.
and then so you out processed within those 30 days, but also you said about 6 months out you had already interviewed for the position.
Yeah, because the guy would only show up every now and again, so I didn't know when I was going to
Oh,
see him again.
gotcha.
And
That.
he sent the paperwork, I think, a week or two before I actually left
Mhm.
for me to sign. I mean, we shook hands and everything like that. So I was like, I was still a naive kid, so I was like, there's no way to haggle this, up anymore. So
Right.
I agreed to it. So let's go forth and conquer. And I mean, I already did the math, so I was like, I'll be good. But I just took it as an honorable thing because I was like, I'm a man of my word. I said I'd do this job for this much. Let's move forward.
Gotcha.
So I signed the contract, and then when I went to their office that Monday. All it really was, you know, the basic banking stuff, the W-4 and everything like that. So you just filled all that stuff out, and the personal liability claim, and everything, waivers and all that stuff, because you're working with the government. You never know what the hell's gonna happen.
Right.
So I had to sign all that stuff, and that was on the other side of DC. That's why I didn't get to the office until that afternoon. Traffic up there sucks.
All right. So you're back online. We had a little bit of technical issues. Your Starlink decided that it doesn't like working in the nighttime when you're outside.
Yeah.
We were talking about your civilian contract position. We talked about your first day that you finally made it to the office Monday afternoon because traffic was awful. And you're a subway guy at that point, right?
Yeah. And it's because I lived in the south side of Baltimore, and I would drive down to BWI Airport. It was only like 7 miles from the house, and I would take the train from there to Central Station in DC, and then take the metro the rest of the way into the Pentagon. It literally dropped you off right underneath the Pentagon. So I
Mm-hmm.
can just walk up the stairs, go into work, and be in that lovely little city of a building.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for those people who don't know, who've never been inside of the Pentagon, it is absolutely a city. And
Yes.
I think in the basement where you're talking about, there's a lot of restaurants.
Well, there's not just in the. Well, there was one in the basement, but a lot of the restaurants are on the first floor
Okay.
and spread out along the some of the other wings of the Pentagon, and then that little building you see in the quad and all the pictures, that's another restaurant.
The hot dog stand, right?
It was a sub shop, like a sausage sub shop, like a Sabaros.
Okay.
Yeah,
There you go.
and the whole courtyard is no hats, no salute. So you go out there and relax, and they'd have concerts and all sorts out there.
It's awesome. So let's talk about your commute.
So the commute, it was a lot of fun, because you end up making like a pattern out of the thing, because you're taking the same train every day. You're standing on the same part of the platform and sitting on the train in the same spots, and you end up getting commute buddies, and you start finding out where they work and stuff like that. There was one lady that worked at the Sergeant at Arms in the Capitol. There was another person that worked at the EPA that did that went around for all the cleanups and all that stuff, and organized all that kind of things. Another one was a buddy of mine from my first assignment in Germany who worked at the Joint Staff that I didn't know literally worked in the office 2 stories above me in the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a bunch of other random people. I mean, just all over the place. I mean, and you form like this little mini community during your commute, and you start asking about their vacations that they take and their families and all that stuff. So it's like a whole nother French culture kind of thing, and it's pretty cool. I mean, you're spending about an hour with these people every day, maybe sometimes twice a day if they're on the same schedule to and from work. So yeah,
Right. So that's kind of how you start building your network.
oh
Um,
yeah, because the sergeant armed person was really interesting, and if I was wanting to get closer to the political game, she would probably have been one of the ones I would have talked to.
gotcha. Yeah. See, and then you just happen to know people, and you happen to talk to people, and next thing you know,
Oh yeah,
you're rubbing elbows with people that you never thought you would ever rub elbows with.
no, yeah, and it was very unique. I mean, to be in that kind of those situations, and you never really appreciate that time until you're away from it, and you're like, oh, that was really cool. And at the time you're going through it, you're like just normal, you're just numb to it.
Right.
And you look back on it, and you're like, that was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah. And so, how long did you stay a civilian contractor?
7 months.
Okay.
The recession of 2008 happened, and I was the low man on the totem pole, brand new guy. So they're like, "Hey, you got to go home. We'll call you when you can come back." And I kind of took that as I'm not going to get a call anytime soon because everything just plummeted and jobs were being cut. I was looking at regular jobs and everything in the DC area, all the jobs got cut by like 20 grand.
Okay.
And I was like, I am not going to be able to afford this house and support my family. And I was like, I could join the Army again. I just left
Yeah.
and I literally just had a kid
Mm-hmm.
like what was it, 2 weeks, 1 month before that, before I got let go. So I was like, I gotta do something.
Yeah.
So I literally took my Love Me book, kind of walked into the Baltimore recruiting station, and I was like, "Where's the guy in charge of the station?" And I walked back there and I went, "Here, help me." And
Nice.
literally, he drove me over to MEPS, and they treated prior service like royalty.
Okay.
When I went through that MEPS, I went to the head of every line. I bypassed all the brand new privates, got all my testing done and out of the way. I mean, I literally did all of MEPS within a half a day.
Right. Because for
And
most people, it's a day, if not longer.
yeah, yeah. And I just ran through there like it was nothing. And they literally like, come back tomorrow, we'll have your orders. And I was like, sweet.
Nice. So, what did you end up getting?
So that's when I went back in, there was no signal MOSs available at the time at
Okay.
all. They're like, well, you can try to take a demotion in rank because since I haven't been out a year, I didn't have to go through basic training again. It was like a 2 week basic training for people who've been out over a year. And since I wasn't out over a year, I could keep my same rank.
Okay.
And they're like, well, we can put the paperwork in to demote you down to E5 and try to see if there's a MOS is available at the E5 level. And I was like, no. So they only gave me like 3 or 4 MOSs, and I was just like, I guess I'll take the 88 mic because I'm not going to be a tank mechanic or a wheel mechanic. I remember those
Okay.
two, and I was like, I'll take that one.
Now you're an 88 Mike.
Yep,
Super fun.
yeah. So I went the next day, got my orders, and it told me I needed to be at an Fort oh, it was in Missouri. What's
For
that?
Leonardwood.
Leonardwood. I had to be in Leonardwood in a week,
Okay.
so packed up and grabbed my little Ford Ranger and drove out to Fort Leonard Wood. I literally sat there for like a week before they finally let us go through because there was a group of us, all prior service, just sitting at the reception center waiting to get TA 50.
Okay.
So to get redressed, they ran you through like a brand new private going through basic training, gave you your uniforms, fit you for Class A's, all the little basic stuff, and then they're like, "There's AIT, go for it."
Right.
And we got
And so,
we
how
got
many other
there.
prior service were there?
We had our own little platoon. I think there was like 50 of us.
Oh man,
It was
of
a
all
big group of
varying
us.
ranks.
All yeah, we had E7s, E6s, E5s, E4s. I mean, yeah, the whole gamut. And some of them used to be 11 Bravo. I mean, all over the place as far as prior MOSs go.
Gotcha.
Because one of the guys I met was 11 Bravo. He was discharged because he got wounded in combat, and they had to cut his chest open to get his heart going. So he had a big scar down the middle of his chest.
All right. Cool. So you're in AIT for the third time, is what I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
the third time.
Yeah. So
But
most people don't do it that many times. I don't think.
no, once, maybe twice.
Maybe twice. Yeah, if you're
Yeah,
lucky.
maybe
But no, you
twice.
decided 3 times was
Yeah, I mean, I'm a glutton for punishment.
yeah,
But
obviously.
um, but yeah, there was about 50 people there, and all various ranks. But they didn't have us staying with the privates at their little barracks and all that stuff. We had like our own little compound next to reception that they had all these little trailers at, and they're like, "There's your spot. Stay over there. Don't mix with the privates." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah. Yeah, they treat them a little bit differently.
Yeah,
So I
oh
discovered.
man, I got yelled at one day while I was there. Retreat came on for 5 o'clock after a formation. Everyone was everyone was just kind of gathered around after the formation was done. The retreat went off, and this private was saluting, and his bag was slowly sliding off his shoulder. So he grabbed it, lowered his salute, put it back on his thing, and then put his hand back up. I was like, "Hell no!" So I waited for retreat to get done, and I grabbed him. I pulled him to the side because all these people were walking up and down those big sidewalks in front of the private's barracks. I said, "Never, never drop your salute." I was like, "I don't give a shit. That bag is around your ankles." I was like, "Leave that thing where it's at." Now let him go. Just give him a little firm, warning.
Right.
The next day, the cadre come grab me, and they're like, "Hey, we need to talk to you in the office." I was like, "What happened?" So they're like, "You can't touch." It wasn't about the yelling, the fussing at him. It was about because I touched him and pulled him to the side. And I was like, "You kidding me, right?" Because I grabbed him and pulled him to the side so I can have a conversation with him. I was like, "You won't hear a word from me ever again."
Got it. Okay, so you had a very fun third AIT.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
then
it was all right. I mean, it was super relaxed. I mean, as far as like how the cadre handled us, we just went through the courses with the instructors. They kind of did keep us separate from the private, so we didn't intermingle with them and all that stuff. So we did all the normal training we're supposed to do. But we kind of like had a big gap between the both of us, so this way we didn't intermingle with them. The only time we
gotcha.
kind of intermingled with them was they did a range day. They had us more as cadre than they did as going through as ranges. And then there was when we're sitting on the pad driving the vehicles because there's only like one set of bleachers.
Okay.
So that was like the only time we were ever close to the privates.
Yeah.
But
You didn't have to go to the field with them for their field exercise?
we did go to the field with them, but we didn't do all the little dumb stuff that they did.
That's fair. No,
Yeah.
I asked that question because as I was going through OBC at Aberdeen Proving Ground, which is also at the time when Ordnance AIT was, there were some NCOs, E6s, and E5s who also reclassed, and they were going through AIT with the privates, probably a little bit separate. But when we, as the officers, went out to the fields, we also went to the field with the AIT soldiers, and I had like a couple of E6s, and I was like, "You are not. Are you actually in AIT right now? What is happening?" I didn't know. I didn't know. I'm brand new to the Army. I didn't know
Yeah.
that reclassing was a thing. So I was like, "How is this
How is this
staff sergeant?"
possible?
Yeah, I'm like, "Why is this staff sergeant here?" But I was super happy to see him. To be fair,
Tell me what to do.
Yeah, because I was like, "Oh, thank God, I'm not gonna be stupid."
I mean,
But
we're
yeah,
not to step on the dick.
yeah, yeah. Like I might step on it with one foot instead of two. Okay, so you finish AIT the third time, and what's your next duty station now?
I went straight to Korea after that.
Okay,
So of course you get like a week where you get to go home. So I went back to Maryland, spent the week with the family, and Amy was kind of mad that I had to go to South Korea, of course. But I mean, I'm about to spend a year away from her. Besides the few months I just spent away from her.
right.
But we started making plans to.
And oh, by the
Because
way, your child is still very young.
yeah, I mean, still under 6 months old.
Yeah,
I really don't know him because only knew him for like a couple weeks before, a month before I left. So yeah, I leave, and we start making plans during that time frame for her to get things together so we can sell the house because we had this giant house that we have to sell,
right,
and we know we can't keep it because we're going to end up somewhere else after South Korea.
right.
I tried my hardest to get reassigned to the DC area, but couldn't. But that's when I ended up to Fort Drum after South Korea.
Okay,
So Amy ended up selling the house 2 months or so before I had to leave South Korea. Um, awesome because due to the fact that I was in South Korea, you get your orders, I don't know, 4 or 5 months beforehand. Um, so she had my orders. She was able to do the pre-pickup PCS stuff to get most of the house picked up.
Oh, good.
So when she sold the house, she literally had it packed as if we were going to PCS somewhere.
Right.
And she took what little belongings that we needed to the temporary place where they found a place to rent, and she took an awesome care. I didn't have to worry about the family at all because she's the best. I mean, I never have to worry about anything going on with the family with her. Because when I got home, I think all we needed was like a little U-Haul trailer when we moved the family up to Fort Drum.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it was seamless. I mean, she made something that was so stressful for a family seem so effortlessly. I mean, to get out from underneath a mortgage, take care of 3 kids, one brand new. I mean,
Yep.
needs full attention. Sell a house. I mean, that in itself, and you got 3 kids, and you're trying to sell a house and keep it clean. I mean, that's impossible. And then get everything picked up, and then sent to a temporary storage location, and then move the family into temporary residence. I mean, you got to have a spouse that you can fully rely on. Otherwise, it will drive you insane because I was 12 hours away. So I'd call her at night. It's the next day
Right.
for her.
Right. Because
Or
6
no,
p.m.,
that morning.
6
It would be
a.m.
that morning, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was insane in order to if I had to handle that and be in a whole nother country.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to have that kind of support, I don't know what I'd do. I mean, I probably would have had less hair by the time you would have. But
You
yeah,
would have had no need to buy razors.
no, it would have been just clean. I would have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, we appreciate Amy and all of her efforts in keeping everything going.
Oh yeah, I mean,
And just
because
moving it all.
without women like her supporting us, we would all been single and spending our money all crazy.
Yeah,
We wouldn't have a penny
absolutely.
of it. But yeah,
Absolutely. I appreciate the fact that you sing her praises. Um, I was married at the time you and I met. If you remember, we spent some time in Afghanistan together. And during that time, the lease ran out on a home that we were at, and my wife at the time, not only did she move, like not only did she find a new place for us to live, but then she moved everybody there. She had 2 very young kids and was pregnant with a third when she was doing that. So just like you, um, if it wasn't for strong women in our lives, we would probably have no hair. So
it would have
I
distracted us from our purpose and what we were doing, where we were at.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, you're all moved up to Fort Drum, up in 10th BSB, and you
Yep.
started off in the Alpha Company, yes?
Yeah, I started off in Alpha Company, but as soon as I got there, they're like, "Oh, you used to be a commo guy. We're gonna stick
Yeah,
you over here with the truck master, so you can help him out with all the radio stuff and everything like that. Besides, keep track of the trucks and all its maintenance and the things." And I was like, "Great, still doing my old job.
yeah.
Nothing to do with transportation."
Nothing to you went to third AIT to learn how to do transportation things,
Yeah,
and then you went to your first duty station not doing transportation things.
yeah.
I say first duty station, but first
Even when I
duty.
went to Korea, I got to Korea, and I'm thinking I'm gonna get assigned to their Alpha company and their BSB. And no, I got assigned to the headquarters company to be their operations sergeant.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This just got even more interesting because we know what ended up happening to you.
Yeah, because you know what happened to me when I got to Tent Mountain. Because
Yes.
I got to 3 Deuce, over in South Korea, and they didn't have an operations sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, we need an operations sergeant. And the company commander grabbed me the next day and was like, oh, by the way, you're also going to do everything an XO does. And I was like, really?
Oh, awesome.
So I got to take care of your supply sergeant, do all your maintenance and everything like that. So every week on Mondays, I would, besides the maintenance stuff doing the motor pool, I'm going to see the battalion XO to sit down with all the other lieutenants to go over all the deficiencies and everything like that. And she's looking at me going, teach these lieutenants how to do their job. And I'm like, yes, ma'am.
You're right. Right.
So now I got the pressure to make sure I stay ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't make the lieutenants make me look bad.
Which
but I got to train them to be
we're good at
just
making
as good as
ourselves
me.
look bad enough.
But I had to train them just to be as good as me. My good thing was I had a great supply sergeant. This man could make things appear and disappear like crazy. I mean, because I was leaving about the same time the company commander was, and when it was time to leave 30 Deuce, and he's going through all his equipment, and he goes, I can't find this. And I was like, what is it? And I'm looking at it. I'm like, you signed for a 500-gallon fuel pod? What did you sign for a 500-gallon fuel pod? So
a year ago when I took command.
yeah, so I ended up running around to find a 500-gallon fuel pod that I can. You have to edit this out. So he ain't got to pay for it.
Right.
The supply sergeant
that
took
fuel
that.
pod is expensive.
Yeah, and so the supply sergeant took that over to the supply people, and we're like, okay, this will do. We'll write it off.
Whoa. Good times. Okay. You get back to Fort Drum. You're at Alpha Company for a cup of coffee, and the next thing you know, you're sitting in the S3 shop.
And what led me to the S3 shop, when we went to Afghanistan the first time in RC North, the battalion S3 shop set up their command center and all this stuff. And my first sergeant looked at me and was like, I want everything that they got here.
Right.
Because we got to move everything around, and I want to talk to everybody. I was like, okay. So I went over there and I surveyed everything that they had, and I was like, okay, I need this kind of radio, these antennas. And I went and just made a mini S3 down in our little Alpha Company headquarters, CP. And at one point in time, a windstorm came through and blew down their antennas, so they had to come down and sit in our shops in order to communicate with the rest of the battalion. And we also moved from one fob to another, and they moved us first to use us as an alternate talk while they moved. So because they knew what I could do, they're like, we're losing these two people in S3. We need to bring some people up. And they're like, we want him, and we'll go figure out who the other person is.
Gotcha.
And that's how I ended up in the S3 shop.
Yeah, and so that means that you were there before I was.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, because we got there. I got to Fort Drum in 2009.
Okay. Yeah. Then you were definitely there before I was. I had thought something different at some point.
Yeah, because I ended up doing 5 years at Drum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which was kind of odd when I hit my 3-year mark, and they're like, "Oh no, you're going to stay right there." That's what Branch was telling me, and I was like, "Okay."
But you were doing okay at Fort Drum.
Yeah. Because the family was doing their thing. They were growing. They're living. They were enjoying their life with everyone that was surrounding them. I was doing well over in Alpha Company because after we did that deployment, the platoon sergeant for the transportation platoon was leaving, so they had me sitting over there for a little while. I think I did that for like 4 or 5 months, and that's when they were losing those people from the S3 shop, and they drug me out of that position over to the S3 shop.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense now.
I was like, I'm finally doing my job.
Yeah, that makes more sense now. I think that's about the time, because I remember specifically those two NCOs that were leaving. One was PCSing, the other was retiring.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember.
He's the one that retired stayed up there at Fort Drum area,
Yep,
and
he
the one
sure
that was
did.
PCS and was going to drill sergeant school.
Yep,
And why he went to drill sergeant school, I think he got picked up for 7.
I think so. I think so. So, um,
Breeze.
we
He
won't
started with
say
a
their
B.
name. Yeah, yeah. I know what it is. Um,
Okay. I'm terrible with names. I lose names after a while.
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, we won't. We'll. I'll probably reach out to them. Well, I know one for sure. I can reach out to the other one. I have no
He's
idea.
probably got a big gigantic beard on him.
You know, he
The one that
may.
retired and stayed up there.
Yeah, he may, but he may have also like shaved it recently. I think I saw what maybe him on Facebook with him who just kind of buzzed it off at least.
Yeah, because he ended up being a semi driver for a while. Didn't he?
Um, but school bus repair.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I remember at least that was his first job out. So, um, we'll see what happens. I mean, if I can find him, we might be able to. I might be able to
Yeah,
reach out.
he's as recluse as I am. No social media.
Yeah, exactly. Which is funny. Like that's why if I saw him on Facebook or on social media,
His wife probably posted the picture.
it's very possible. It's very very possible. We went to Afghanistan together, and it's interesting that you had brought up the fact that you were what?
That's it for the second time.
Right, for the second time, but this time it was with you and I.
Yeah.
And so, which it's interesting that you brought up the fact that you were an ops sergeant in South Korea because you ended up being the ops NCO for the battalion. While we were
because we had an E7 that didn't want to do the job.
Also, we had deployed such a small entity. I think the brigade element was the size of a battalion.
Yeah.
So the battalion was about the size.
We might have had, 200 people with us?
Yes. Maybe. And you became the forward deployed company first sergeant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the first week in country, our first sergeant got a tasking that I think he applied for way before we ever were going to go down to Afghanistan, to Oshkosh.
Oh
yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember him. Yes,
because in that same fell swoop that the ops that the E7 didn't want to be ops, she also didn't want to be the first sergeant, and that's when the sergeant majors looked at me, and I was like, "I'll just do it. I don't care. I'm here anyways."
Yeah. And then halfway through that deployment, and granted, it was only a 9-month deployment. I can say only, but partly way through that deployment, the company commander gets called back from Afghanistan.
Yes, and you became the company commander.
And then I became the company commander just randomly.
Yeah.
Mind you, I'm the S3. I'm the guy running the talk. I'm the guy running the show. We're also co-located with the SPO, the support operations. There's at least 3 other captains in there, and they're like,
I don't want to do it.
Yeah. Right? They're like, you're the guy. I'm like, great.
Yeah.
So it just really became like you and me were a team of like commander and first sergeant, and then S3 and ops NCO.
Yeah.
So
we're like, fuck it, we're here.
Yeah, we were just like, well, here it is. I remember we were doing a battalion award ceremony out in the motor pool, and because our company was about the size of a platoon, it was so tiny. When we came up for like end of year awards or end of deployment awards, and they had all gotten approved, like pretty much the entire company platoon was in the awards formation to receive awards. I actually had to have the battalion XO hold the guidon.
Yeah.
Like I literally had nobody else.
What was it? We had 2 E-form below, and they're both in the F6 shop.
And they were both getting awards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I couldn't just use anybody. I literally looked at him and I was like, "Sir, I know this is out of the ordinary, but I literally have nobody else. It's gonna be you and me standing in this formation. Do you mind holding the guidon for me?" This is captain, company commander, and the battalion XO major who's holding my guidon. I'm like, well, I'm sorry.
You do fall underneath me a little bit.
Only a little bit. Only when it comes to your analysis, when I have to be like,
Yeah.
sir, you need to
Yeah.
go take care of this. Um, yeah. Oh my gosh, that was an adventure in and of itself. Luckily, though, he was super. Like, I've known that guy. I mentioned that I was at OBC at Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually one of the instructors. So I had known him for many years prior to. So, and he was a
Okay.
really good guy.
That's
So
cool.
yeah. And so we get back from Afghanistan. I leave the army, and you leave the country again.
Yeah. I was supposed to go to a transportation company in bomb holder that was doing 4 deployments to Poland for
Mm-hmm.
fuel and mail. And also they were doing fuel and mail for all of Germany. And I get pulled en route to a security detail at Yukon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mainly because they saw that I had first sergeant time, security clearance, had nothing to do with communications this time. But yeah, I think it was just those 2 things that really the guy was like, they lowered the position from E7 to an E6, and you fit the criteria, and I'm leaving. So I
Got it.
need you to take over my spot. And I literally had like 2 weeks with him
Okay.
to kind of like figure out what the hell was going on, because I had 11 people, including
Okay.
myself, and we were a detachment from the company that's up in another part of Germany. So our first sergeant and all that's somewhere else in another part of the country that I don't know. I never meet. I never met him the entire 3 years I was there, and I report to a lieutenant colonel at Yukon.
Okay.
And my first assignment out the door is the defense secretary is coming to town. You need to coordinate everything to take care of him. The security vehicles is the biggest hurdle was the transportation of all his cargo, because they never had, evidently the this little echelon that I just became a part of never dealt with this big of a person before. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I just got here. So I'm literally calling. There's a special ops support group on the other side of the city, and I'm calling them, going, "Hey, do y'all got 5 tons, deuce and half, anything?" And then their pre team was there, and they're like, "We can't have any military vehicles." And I was like, "Well, it wasn't U-Haul, it was somebody else like that. That's in downtown." And I was like, "Do our driver's license allow us to drive these?" I was like, "Let's go find out." And the civilian guy that was working hand in hand with the lieutenant colonel spoke German fluently, and I was like, come on, let's go. Bring your credit card because we might get a van." And
Yep.
we went down there and rented the biggest van that we could possibly drive with our license. And come to find out, at the end of my 3 years, I found out the dude lied to the girl because she didn't
Oh.
know what she was reading on our license.
Okay.
Because you were supposed to have an actual trucker's license for Germany to drive that big of a truck. For us, it's a standard U-Haul that we could go downtown and rent with our normal driver's license. But over there, it's a completely different story. And all of them are manual, and there's only 2 of us in the whole group that can drive manual because they're all young kids. So
Gotcha.
me and this other E5, who's an old school guy, can drive manual. So we, of course, get stuck with the box truck while everyone else gets the glory of dealing with all the dignitaries.
Right. Mind you, this is 2014, 2015. Right. So 10 years ago, and still people don't know how to
Yeah,
drive stick.
but I mean, that whole after dealing with that, I mean, we kind of the we kind of set like a little standard for ourselves on how to handle that kind of situation. So we actually ended up having um, three more visits, two more different Secretary of Defenses come through while I was there for those 3 years.
Okay.
And we handled it the same each time. It was a lot of fun dealing with their cadre, or not their cadre, but their advanced teams, and then their teams that actually come down on site, because shit, they travel with like 15 press people, and then they got their big giant entourage, which is like another 30 some odd people, and then they got their security guys and all their behind the scenes people that we're dealing with the cargo vehicle. And yeah, it's a huge circus.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it was a lot of fun, seeing how all that works when they come to visit, and all the little prep work that we got to do for when they come into town, because we're taking the security guys that have to deal with the side by side, security of the individual, and taking them to like the hospitals in the local area, driving them around all the routes and things like that, so they can understand the layout of the city. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, dealing with that kind of stuff, and I had to do the same thing that the guy that brought me in,
Mhm.
because we wouldn't get people assigned directly to us. So I
Oh,
took what he did, and I did the same thing, but I reached directly out to the G1 of Europe and got a point of contact there, and was like, hey, I need all people coming in during this time frame, their ERB, because that's
right.
how he did it with me. I need their ERB so I can see if they got a few requirements. And granted, I'm getting E5 and below,
Mhm.
so a lot of them, and they're all 88 mics, they don't have security clearances
Right.
because they don't require it. So I would get these brand new kids off of AIT, and some of them were E4s. So a lot of them were just E2s, E3s coming straight off the street. I'm like, do you know how to drive a car? You got a driver's license? Calling them in the States before they ever get to us to make sure they got this kind of stuff. And once they get on site, I'm like, this is big boy rules. There's nobody here to coddle you. I'm going to give you a phone, a $50,000 car, and $2,000 to go buy suits so you can look like the security guys. I need you to do your job without me hovering around you.
Right.
And I treated them like adults, and they acted like adults. I didn't have any issues for 3 years outside of one guy getting a DUI.
Oh man.
But he was close to his time leaving, so it wasn't that painful. So
Okay.
I only had to deal with that for a couple months. But
Yeah,
outside of that,
and that was for 3 years,
for three
right?
years.
For 3 years, you had that position. You had
Yeah,
numerous people come in and out, and honestly, only one incident the entire 3 years. That's
yeah,
really good.
yeah. And I did a lot of cross coordination between, like I said, there was that special forces support group.
Hmm.
When I would get bigger groups in and I didn't have enough people to drive, I would borrow vehicles, I would borrow personnel, and I'd be like, "You got a pair of slacks and a polo shirt," kind of stuff, because you can't wear the lovely camis anymore
Yeah,
while you're with
I'm
me.
sure they hated not wearing
Oh
their
yeah, they
camis.
hated it. But I took care of the command. I took care of the command too. I remember walking in because I borrowed this one guy from the MP group. It was the day after the whole event finished, and I got the company commander an extra coin.
Okay.
So I wanted to make him happy, tell him thank you for supporting me and everything like that. And, I go down to where the little company headquarters was, and they got this guy staying outside the company commander's office with his sergeant, and I was like, he's in trouble. I said, let me get in here and kind of soften the blow for you for a minute. So I went in there and I made the captain's day. But I found out, yeah, I ended up softening the blow for that guy because he was there to get a company grade Article 15.
No.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So
Got it.
that was a lot of fun for 3 years. Not wearing, I never, unless I was taking a guy to a promotion board, I never put on my uniform.
Oh, there you go.
One of the guys that was there, I got him promoted to E6, and he's in E7 now, about to get off the trail.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations to him.
Yeah. Two of the guys that work for me are warrant officers now.
Awesome.
Yeah. One of them was my basically my replacement before I left. He was my he was my second to come in, and he was going to be my replacement when I left, and he was supposed to find a replacement for his position once I left.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it
And
always fun to see like where people end up after you've trained them, after you've like sort of mentored them as best as you can? Isn't that kind of
yeah,
crazy? And that it feels really good too, doesn't it, to see that they've succeeded afterwards?
yes, yes, and especially when you treat them like human beings and
Yeah,
not like a tool,
yeah,
because
absolutely.
they know they're a tool. You ain't got to treat them like that. They already know that they're there to do a job, and they're going to do it the best they possibly can as long as you treat them like human beings.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you're not there just for their 9 to 5. You're there for them for all the stuff afterwards and in between, because it's the Army. You're a family,
Yeah,
and I got to know all their spouses and kids and all the single soldiers. What they did on the weekends and all that, trying to keep them out of trouble. Because if you ever been to Germany, I mean, there's so much stuff that you can do for nightlife. I mean,
yeah,
so much stuff, and there's a lot of ways things can go wrong. Because I was there when
it's
I was
true.
19. I understand what's there for a nightlife because I experienced it
Yeah, and then you were there
as
later on
a
in life as a mature adult.
yeah. I
Um,
was an adult. I didn't go out the second time around. I hung out with the family. We experienced Europe, and all that stuff. Um, we actually, I mean, you get the spouses over there that don't like to leave the fence, so they're
yeah,
like, I don't want to leave little America, and you're like, but there's so much out here.
there's so
There's
much
all
to
this
see.
history.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you kind of you take them out for dinner or something like that so they can see the local cuisine and all that stuff, and you kind of break the ice with all that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And so this is that's your final hurrah, isn't it?
No, so I hit 20
Oh,
years while I was there, but
okay.
because um, I was grandfathered when I reenlisted the first time while I was at Fort Drum for in depth, I was grandfathered 23 years.
Okay.
So even though the RCP went down for E6s to 20 years, I was still grandfathered 23.
Okay.
So I took the classes while I was in Germany that they were offering, just so I can get, just in case the Army decided when I hit 20 years that, hey, you got to go home. So
Right.
at 19 years, I took some of the classes to kind of get an eye opening of what's going on, because like you already know, when I got out the first time, they didn't have any of that. They're like, good luck, and just send you on your way. Here's your DD214, make some copies of it. Legal's right over there. That was all the advice I got.
Right. So when you say you took some classes, you're talking about the transition classes. You're talking about
Yes.
the okay. Yeah, so
Yeah. And
that's interesting. What was it like to take those in Germany?
well, it's unique because, I mean, the classes are based off of where you're located. So they had a lot of stuff for people that were getting out and staying in Germany.
Okay.
So if you wanted to get a government job or be a government contractor and things like that, they had advice and work groups structured for that, so you can build your resumes to tailored for that kind of out. They had the standard financing and everything like that as everywhere else, but it was mainly leaned towards the guys that were going to get out in Europe.
Okay.
So even if you were going to go back to the States and get out, they didn't help you out that much with that.
Okay.
So
I don't mean to be prude about this, but I feel like most of the transition program that the Army have is geared towards that, right? They're geared towards the people who are getting out and staying in the area. So
yes,
this seems weird to me. Maybe not weird, but it just seems odd to me that they would do the same thing in Germany, like people getting out and staying in Germany.
because most of the people that were getting out and staying in Germany, because I was going through the retirement one, not the ETS one.
Okay,
So I wasn't part of the little crew that was going through all that. Um, so most of the people that was going through it was E7s, majors, higher ranking people.
got it.
And a lot of them, they had a game plan. A lot of them were already scouting out. Oh, there's this budget person that's leaving, so this job's going to come open. So they already had an in.
Oh, interesting.
So they were working the system for their little goal. So I was more worried about, because I was paranoid, because I didn't know if the Army was going to pull the rug out from underneath me at 20 years.
Right.
Once I realized, because I talked to Branch, and they're like, "No, you're good till 23," and I was like, "Okay, I can kind of let up on my anxiety a little bit." But I finished the classes since I started them, just to kind of get a heads up on what to expect in another 3 years.
In 3 years, yeah, exactly.
Which the sad thing is, well, I'll get to that once we get to the next part. Because I left Germany. Well, now I'm leaving Germany, and I'm trying to make plans to get closer to where I want to retire at. And Branch is like, well, the closest we can get you is either Fort Stewart or what's the one in Kentucky, the big red one?
Riley.
Riley. They're like, one is 6 hours, one is 4 hours, close to Fort Benning. They couldn't get me to Fort Benning. And I was like,
right.
I'll take Stewart. It's only 4 hours.
And
I should have took the light infantry and went to Riley.
Okay.
And that's a whole nother story, because heavy armor is a completely different animal after you've been in a light infantry group.
Yeah.
Because light infantry it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it seems a lot more fun, because it's more on what can you do with less.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I know the feeling. I went from heavy at Fort Hood to light infantry at Fort Drum. So I know that fun factor and that whole how all that worked.
Yeah, because once you get to a heavy unit, they're like, "Oh, you're not a 19 Delta, or was it some kind of tanker?" They're like, you don't matter."
Yeah, that's true. And also, like, they don't. It's almost like a crime to get your boots dirty because they just ride everywhere.
But when I got to them, I was supposed to go to an FSC, and I just blew out my back maybe a year before I left Germany. I ended up, I didn't know I had this issue while I was at Drum, because I didn't realize the signs, because my left leg was going weak.
Okay.
And it was because nerves were being pushed on by my vertebrae, or my the disc.
Oh, you had a bulging disc?
One time I was working out in the gym, and the guy said it looked like someone just swept my feet off from underneath me, and I just fell on the ground.
Oh, no.
And what happened was my disc abruptly just busted out and hit my spine and just knocked my nerves out from underneath me.
Oh, gosh.
So I wasn't able to run anymore because of the nerve damage. And so when I showed up at Fort Stewart, they're like, "We're going to send you to an FSC." And I was like, "I don't need to be an FSC." I was like, "Those guys do nothing but go, go, go. And I'm old and broke."
Right. And not just I'm old and broke and like a dirt bag. It's no, I'm literally, I can't, the FSC needs me to do X, Y, and Z. And I can't physically do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, I knew my limitations. I knew what they needed, and I knew I wasn't it. So at reception, I'm sitting here looking at another E6 from the FSC, and I was like, "You're going to take me to the battalion." He's like, "What?" I was like, "You're going to take me to battalion." I don't know where I'm at. I'm just at reception.
Yeah.
So he takes me to battalion, and I go in and I see the S1 sergeant. And he's not looking at nothing. He goes, You're going to go to the FSC? And I was like, "Did you look at my ERB?" Because while I was at Fort Drum, it was when we came back from Afghanistan the second time, just after you left. I went to battle staff.
Okay.
So I was battle staff qualified. Actually, no, that was after the first one. So I was qualified when we went the second time with you.
Okay.
I said, "Did you look at my ERB?" He goes, "No. Well, I just know I need an E6 88 mic over in the FSC." And I was like, "Look at my ERB." And he pulls up my ERB and he's looking at it. He's like, "Hang on a minute." And he jumps up from his seat and he runs straight to the sergeant major's office. Little did I know, the ops sergeant has a heart condition and is being medicaled out of the Army. And they're about to be deployed to South Korea for 9 months.
Okay.
The the S1 sergeant brings me over to the sergeant major, and he looks at me and he looks at the ERB. And he goes, "So you don't want to be an FSC?" I was like, "Not really." I was like, I'm broke, I'm old, and I'm about to retire. Like, so you don't need me in an FSC. I was like, you need me somewhere else. I was like, as I could see from what he just did, we're running out of the S1. You need me somewhere else. And he goes, I need you in operations. I've seen you done this before. I said, yeah, a couple times.
Yeah, no kidding.
And he goes, and we're also in the middle of a talk, little war game kind of thing, where they bring all the talks together and they try to make sure that everyone communicate and how they handle the different little stresses.
Yeah,
because you remember going through that Fort Drum.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, you're going through that right now. And it's like my second day going in processing.
Right.
I'm not even finished in processing. He goes, yeah. And I was like, when can I go out there? He goes, can you get a break tomorrow? And I was like, I'll look at the schedule. Sure. He goes, have the ops sergeant major come, or he called him sergeant major, but he's an E7, come and get you and bring you out to it. I was like, okay. So he comes and picks me up from reception and drives me out there to the little talk game. And I walk in this talk, and you would have been just as ashamed as I was of this talk.
Okay.
So I walk into this little drash. They got a drash medium.
Okay.
And they got plastic, or they got foam boards with plastic over them hanging on 550 cord from the ceilings.
Okay.
Maybe one or two tables and some tough boxes lining the walls. Nothing else. Maybe a laptop or two. And I walked in and I was like, "This is your setup?" And he goes, "Yes." And I was like, "I'm gonna sit over here." I went and sat in the corner because the sergeant major and the colonel were coming in to get their evening brief. And I was like, I got to see how this goes.
Right.
And I can look at the disgust on the sergeant major's face when he walks into the tent. And I was like, I'm just watching. I'm got my game face on because I don't want any emotions coming out of me. And I just want to see how they handle this. So the ops NCO and the ops captain's there, and they're giving them the brief and the rundown of everything that's going on. And I can see the disgust on the colonel's face. And I was like, she's not happy. She's not happy at all. I was like, this is going to be fun. So they get done and they leave. And I looked at the ops sergeant and I was like, are you happy with what you just did? And he goes, no. And I was like, can I make some suggestions? So I asked him, I was like, where's the rest of your equipment? I was like, you don't have a briefing area. I was like, you don't have any of your Blue Force tracker up. I said, you don't have this, that, and blah, blah, blah. I said, you have nothing. No maps. Nothing.
Yeah.
They don't even know the phase lines for all your movements that the other people are going through, so you don't interfere with their stuff like for convoys and stuff like that. Nothing. So fast forward about a month.
Okay.
They go to the field right after that. Well, literally like the last 2 days I was in reception, they went to the field. So I get back there on rear D, and I immediately know already that it's going to be a bad experience. But I'm in the motor pool cutting grass because, that's what rear D does.
Rear D does, yep. With your awesome back.
Yeah, I didn't care. I was just like, I'm just happy to be there, kind of thing. Cause look at disgust going, I got work to do.
Yeah.
But I'm waiting for them to come out the field. And like I said, they're only 2 days into the field problem. All of a sudden, one of the guys show up with a cargo Humvee and just rummaging through one of the 20-foot containers in the motor pool. And I was like, oh, he's in the S3 shop. I was like, what you looking for? He's like, they forgot one of the pieces for the drash, the end caps. And I was like, they did what? I was like, you need help? So I helped him find it. He runs back out to the field. So I know now they're not prepared. And I know that within the next month, we're supposed to be packing out for NTC. And I was like, this ain't going to fly. So like 2 weeks later, it's still bugging me because I've been digging into the containers. I've been digging into all the little storage points, and I can't find what I'm looking for. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can't sleep. I just get up, get dressed, and I just go straight to the CQ at battalion staff duty. And I was like, I need the keys to the motor pool so I can unlock the gate. I was like, so if anybody calls you, I'm in the motor pool. So I go down there and I just unload every. There's two 20-foot containers, a small little 10-foot container, and a storage room. And I open up a couple of the containers and I find some boxes and I start walking out the size of the talk for the tent. And I make my little corners. And I was like, this is the area. I'm going to build me a glass talk. And I just unload all these containers. By the time they showed up for the 9 o'clock formation, the colonel's walking through with the sergeant major. But I had the talk set up on how he wants. I got a U-shape briefing area where everyone can work. I got the Blue Force tracker up. I got the screens up. I got all sorts of other stuff going on. And I got so he can see, I said, here's your maps and this and that. And this is going to go here and this. And he's just like, and I got a whole nother section for this is where your S1's going to be. And I said, this is where this is going to be. And this is where this is going to be. Because I know from the little talk scenario, they had separate tents that hooked onto the drash for the right. S4 and the S1. I was like, this is how this is going to play out. And they're like, just keep going. And they go do formation.
Right.
After formation gets done, the battalion commander brings over all the officers from all the shops and goes, help him and do whatever he says.
There you go.
And I just start breaking everything down, having these captains and lieutenants and the E6s and E5s from the other shops start going through, labeling things, packing it up properly and nice. So this way, when we get to NTC, this is in this box. This is in this box. This goes over here. They told me I ended up uncovering like $50,000 worth of flipos because I found equipment that they wrote off years ago.
My goodness.
Yeah. And some of the equipment I found was broken beyond
unserviceable use. For sure.
And I was just amazed. Mm-hmm. But either way, I had them ready for NTC. I got all the equipment up and running. So NTC was a breeze.
Yeah. Well, compared to the rest of the previous TalkXs. Hey, y'all, we're going to take a quick break. We're already over an hour, and there's a lot more to come. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Thank you for your patience getting through those technical difficulties, along with the cats, the dogs, and all the other critters. We'll be back next week to finish out Jeff's story. You won't want to miss his VA journey. Anyway, see you next week, lads.